Shabbat Shalom, everybody. My name is noelhadley. We made it another Friday night. As you can see, I am still in my trailer, living the salt life here on the beach. I gave the explanation last week as to why we're here right now, where, of course, people pay us to leave our house. And when that happens, we leave and we get in our fifth wheel and we drive to wherever. I think we're going to spend a lot of the year this summer in Florida. I think that's the plan, because we are renting our house out a lot. Now, we're getting ready right after Sabbath. We're going to be driving back home. I'm looking forward to this next week because for me, it is Passover. A lot of you out there have probably already had Passover, which is totally fine. We're all on different calendars, so I'm maybe on the later end this year. But there are quite a few people from the Tuck Discord group that are coming over to my house, and we're just going to be hanging out for several days, starting Sunday, Monday, Tuesdays. People are staying till Thursday, Friday, and we're just going to have a great time just talking. I think we're just going to wake up in the morning, drink coffee, 3 square meals a day, and staying up late. So the late hours talking till we can't take it anymore. So I'm looking forward to this next week. So just expect next Friday, like my hair is going to be a little disheveled, and I'll probably have black spots under my eyes, and you'll know what's going on or what has gone on this last week. All right. I have so much I want to cover tonight. Oh, before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and play this because I always want to play the incredible research of Rockman. And Rockman, actually, while we were here at Myrtle Beach, it seems like a long time ago now, Rockman, but it was probably about a little over a week and a half ago, he came out and we took a long romantic walk down the beach together. And seeing as how we are in the middle of, I think the splashdown happened probably an hour ago, but this last week, a lot of people were looking at the Artemis mission around the moon, which I'll have something to say about that tonight. This was his incredible research that he continues to do here at Tuck. I'm going to play this for you guys real quick.
How you doing? I'm standing on the beach here on the coast of South Carolina, and down there in Florida, about 2 hours ago, they had a lunar launch. And they went up in the sky way up there. I've been down there and watched them before, but the thing is, they went way up there, and check it out. They say they're going to the moon, but the moon's way over here. I mean, look at that. All they had to do was get a boat and a big ladder.
So thank you, Rockman, for your incredible insight into that. Keep it up. And just go ahead and point this out because someone is going to say it in the comments or whatever. Thank you. They didn't go around the moon. I understand that fully. We'll be talking a little bit about that tonight. But first, I wanted to cover this right here. Night Moves, The Lost Dance of the Millennial Kingdom. And there was a little bit of research that has developed on this recently. I told you guys that with the Torah portions, I want to start incorporating a little bit more of my personal research because it just I fleshed this out week after week after week. And for those of you who don't read the reports, you can come to my website and see all the updates all the time. They kind of just, they go unnoticed by some people because I'm not making videos out of all this stuff. Now, if you guys don't know what this is, Night Moves, The Lost Dance of the Millennial Kingdom, I have tried to look at all the different aspects of the Middle Ages. If the position that I have put forward several years ago was that the Millennial Kingdom happened from the early to the late Middle Ages, from 500 to 1500, and the whereabouts of those years in there, I don't like just making up history and saying it was all made up, that kind of stuff, and then I just can put in whatever I want, and then I'm worse of a historical revisionist than the historical revisers. I have put this to the test and looked at textual evidence, all sorts of things. One of the fascinating things that has come forward is the idea of this medieval dance that was the rage for 1,000 years all over the world. It was called the carol, the rondeau. There's different variations of the name depending on what language you're talking about, but it was all where they would hold hands and go in a circle. And the thing that I learned very early about this is that there were no surviving lyrics at all. And this has been a head scratcher for historians, all sorts of medieval historians, are like, how is it possible that we have evidence that there was this dance? We see this today in Russia. We see it all around the Baltic and the Black Sea. We see it with the Ashkenazi, right, the Jews. We see it with Italy, Greece, just everywhere. This circle dance is. We see remnants of it today, but there's no lyrics. There's no surviving lyrics. And I'm going to show you what I came across just recently. I'm skimming a lot of this right here. The first thing I wanted to cover, though, and here's some of the examples you can see right here, just snapshots of all these different cultures all over the world that does the circle dance. Perhaps you've seen this yourself. I've seen some in person that I put in this report. This was kind of interesting here in this scene in Robin Hood, where Prince of Thieves, the Kevin Costner version, where when Little John's wife gives birth right afterwards. I was watching it when I was in England this last year after going to Sherwood Forest in Nottingham that day. I'm like, I'm going to watch this movie. I couldn't believe it. They actually had the dance in the movie, which was kind of fun. Sorry for all the scrolling. But here's what I want to show you right here. I'm not sure I actually read this to you. I need to do a whole study on the secret sayings of Yesu. And just the thing is that whoever decided to call it the secret sayings, they were trying to be provocative, and that scares some people away. It should just be the sayings of Yesu. There's no secret sayings here. It was a document that was found in China that is an ancient document, that is a gospel in China that is very much like the Gospel of Thomas. And here's a scene here where it's basically an exchange between Yahshua, he's Yesu in this, and his disciples. And so Yesu asked Miriam, "What shall you do when I return from the dead?" And Miriam said, "If you were to return from the dead, I would observe awestruck silence and speak to no one about it." Yesu said, "You have learned well, Miriam. You shall be my apostle." Now, this is, of course, interesting because Miriam, this is Mary Magdalene. She is considered by the Eastern Church as, and the Catholic as well, as the apostle of the apostles. She is the chief apostle because she was the one to first proclaim the resurrection to the other apostles, right? So you see a little bit of a play going on here, but it is fascinating. I'm not here to talk about Mary Magdalene tonight. It is fascinating nonetheless that what we do know about Mary Magdalene is that she went off and lived in that cave in France, and she basically, it wasn't a vow of silence, but she didn't really speak to anybody. So it's interesting that she says that she would do that, and she did. And speaking of the silence, this is what we then see. "Have you not heard that it was said of old, those who speak do not know, those who know do not speak?" And Kepha said, "But we must say something. How can we proclaim the good news if we can say nothing?" And Yesu smiled but did not speak. Then he led his disciples in the circular dance of joy that they danced until the dawn. Now, the first time I read that, I was just like, oh my goodness, because I had just written this whole report some months earlier trying to find these lost lyrics. And the answer may be right in front of us right here, that they were never intended to have lyrics, that it's actually like the clue of the kingdom itself, that it was something that happened, it came, and it's kind of like not documented. They came, they danced, they saw, they experienced, and they moved on in their circle dance. But then just this last week or two, because I'm developing my Rakia, the website on top, which is the poetry project. So anybody out there who's a poet, you want to send in your poems, I will love to read them and see about publishing them. And it's been a lot of fun, the different people in the community that brought them forward. And as part of Rakia, what I'm doing is I'm going back to a lot of the church fathers. And I love the anonymous people from the Middle Ages, the people like we don't know who they are, but they wrote these beautiful verses. Well, I discovered this poem, and it's by a Franciscan friar. Now, the friar didn't write it. He actually was quoting from a poem in his sermon, and the sermon is about the wedding feast of the Lamb. And it's titled, based on the first line, "Hand by hand we shall us take." So I was reading this and I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is a carol. So this may be right here one of the this may be the only surviving lyrics that we actually have to a carol. There might be others, I just haven't found them yet. But there's people who have written entire books about this, and they're like, yeah, we can't find any. But you tell me if this is a carol or not. This is what it says right here. Hand by hand we shall us take, and joy and bliss shall we make. For the devil of hell man hath forsake, and God's son is made our make. A child is born amongst man, and in that child was no wam, and that's the Old English word for sin. That child is God, that child is man, and in that child our life began. Sinful man, be blithe and glad, for your marriage, thy peace is grad, or proclaim. That's kind of interesting. You know, like we have like graduation, right? Grad, which is a proclamation. When Christ was born, come to Christ, thy peace is grad. For thee was his blood shed, who were forlorn or lost. Sinful man, be blithe and bold, for heaven is both bought and sold. Every foot, come to Christ, thy peace is told. For thee he gave 100-fold his life to boat or to redeem you. So what we see here in the first line is the instructions to take a hand. And then, of course, we don't see instructions on, you know, the footwork, the fancy footwork. And there are, I give in this report all the different variations of what people think was going on with these circle dances. But then we are told that you are to be, after you take a hand, you're to be make joyful and bliss. So this was like the conga line of the millennial kingdom. And you would get hundreds of people sometimes. It wouldn't just be necessarily a circle. It could be just like people swerving in and out of cities and towns and over the hills and that kind of stuff. They would just be these huge, massive lines. So we read that the devil has been forsaken and that the marriage of the Lamb has arrived. And then we are told of peace, the shalom has been proclaimed. And the thing that really got to me as I was reading this poem over and over again, it reminded me of the Odes of Solomon. For those of you who remember that I did that report, and I put forward the position that this could have literally been written by Solomon, and not when he lived on the earth, but it really could have been written by a resurrected Solomon. And the writer of the Odes of Solomon identifies himself as a resurrected person. He says he was down in Sheol. He says that Yahshua came down, resurrected them. They went up to paradise. And so you get these, there's actually a few writers identified in the Odes of Solomon, one of which is Yahshua himself, that he actually wrote a poem in there. And they're basically they're telling the mortals, like, just accept the grace that is being given to you. And there seems to be a struggle on that part, which I think would be really hard if you saw these immortal saints and to be able to live up to that. I think that would be hard for a lot of people. And you get the same kind of feeling here, like the language seems to be right on par with Odes of Solomon right here. So there's one more thing I wanted to show you in this report. I can't remember if I went over this with you guys or not. This comes from Numbers 29. So we'll get to this in the Torah portions this year. This comes from Pamela's translation. And this is what she found in here. She said, it says, and on the 15th day of the 7 Hadash shall exist to you a Matkura Kudash, a set apart calling together. Now this is for Sukkot. Yeah, this is for Sukkot. And it's actually a pilgrimage. And I've shown that the entire medieval experience was out of a pilgrimage. There's one big pilgrimage. All that you've heard the saying, all roads lead to Rome. Well, in the Middle Ages, all roads led to the pilgrimage, and they were all designed for that. And somebody could go on a year's journey or longer to just all these different places, all these roads that led to it. So this is what it says. You shall fashion no prescribed work of service. You shall observe a pilgrimage festival, leaping, dancing in a circle, and being giddy unto Yahawaha the ever-living for 7 days. And so it's interesting that in the Enlightenment period, particularly in the Protestant Reformation, there was a lot of propaganda that was thrown against the circle dance. They would call it the dance of the devil, all sorts of stuff. I mean, they were just very much like, we better not see you dancing. You'd better not grab someone's hand and get giddy and dance in a circle. We'd better not see that. Get back to work. That kind of stuff. So this tells you right here, when you do this, you are not to work. You are to be joyful. And this is a part of your pilgrimage. And you go in a circle. So you might be asking yourself, what's the big deal about the circle? It's highly esoteric, and this is where I want to talk about the mystery of the Maypole. Now, not going to go through this whole paper with you guys tonight, but I did do more work on this week. And the one thing I do want to point out, this is me old knowledge for some people. So, some people, they see a pole and immediately they think of a phallus. Everything is a phallus. Like everything is, is that. And so there's English historian Ronald Hutton over here on the left, and then Swedish scholar Carl Wilhelm von Sydow. Now, Ronald Hutton, again, he's English, but he's actually he refers to himself as a pagan. All right, he's not a Christian. He's not trying to, try to blue pill other Christians into paganism. If anything, this guy embraces paganism, and what he tells you is that as an English historian, in all the Maypoles that he looked at, he cannot find any pagan connections whatsoever to what people are claiming to a phallus. Like he's saying, like there is no connection whatsoever. Now, the interesting thing about the Maypole is that I call it one of the mysteries of the millennial kingdom. It's one of those things where it kind of like just came, like nobody knows where it came from. It was just there one day. It was everywhere. And then people are like, why are we doing this? Right? Like it has lost all meaning today. People still do it. It's not very popular. I do talk to older people. They say that when they were kids, they did it in America. I never did. I've never had any experience with a Maypole in my life. So this was interesting for me to begin researching. So I want to go a little bit over the Maypole and the Axis Mundi. Now, I want you to still think about Sukkot, the pilgrimage, and the mystery circle dance, the lost dance of the millennial kingdom. And then think about this with the Maypole. You go in a circle. And of course, just a big giveaway here that the Maypole is the North Pole, the magnetic north. It is the Axis Mundi. It is the world tree. It is the tree of life. All right. So you can see that right here. And a lot of the people who will do the Maypole, they're not hiding the fact that it is a tree. Now, there are individuals out there watching this still who are like going to be like, everything is pagan, Noel. You need to wake up. It's pagan. And I want to remind the viewer that here, when it comes to the mysteries of heaven, that this is one of the problems we run into with like people who are waking up and getting away from Western medicine and pharmakia, and they're going to more natural, healthy alternatives and healing methods that work. And people are like, that's new age, that's a cult, that's and it's just like all this all this controlled opposition out there. And it's the same thing with the mysteries of heaven. I don't know if you can hear that. There is someone cruising by really loud outside blasting the radio. And I guarantee you that all the hundreds of RVs here, nobody wants to hear that. But for some reason, they think that we want to hear that. So if you can hear that, I apologize. I don't want to hear it. I know you guys don't want to either. Remind you with the mysteries of heaven that the mysteries of heaven, we know that the Watchers brought the mysteries of heaven. They were worthless mysteries because they were not instructing people in the instructions in righteous living. Nevertheless, the mysteries of heaven, we see them in the zodiac. We see them all over in the world, and people are trying to hold them as monopolies, right? But they are nevertheless true, some of which we're going to cover tonight. We're going to talk about the number 33 and why the number 33 is not in itself evil, and that there's actually a lot of good things about it. And I put the same thing here. We know that there's a tree of life. We know that there is, when we talk about the world tree, the Axis Mundi, all that kind of stuff, right? It's not pagan, all right? Even if pagan nations do embrace that and try to hold a monopoly on it. So really quickly, this guy right here, his name is Mircea Eliade. He's a French guy. And in the 1950s, he is considered maybe the father of comparative mythology. I don't know if that's true or not. He is considered that. He was the guy before Carl Jung came along, and some of these other guys. He was the guy to basically say, okay, because in the 1800s, the archaeologists and the scholars, they're getting into Sumerian texts and Egyptians, and they're rediscovering all this stuff. And at the time, they were treating it all like islands into themselves, that they were just these these different religions that have really no connection to get together. And we have like this idea that just the Bible is true, which is absolutely true. The Bible is true. But none of these have any bearing on each other. And then these guys, like this guy comes along, and he's like, well, that's actually not true. We actually see that in all these different mythologies all over the world, they have these connections, and we can put them together, and we see that they are perfect fits. So when we talk about this axis mundi, of course, is Latin for axis of the world. We could call it the cosmic axis, the world pillar, the center of the world tree. We can even call it the tree of life. Some people may say that's untrue, but yeah, I would actually put the tree of life in there as well. And you're going to see why in here. If I can even get to the next page. When it comes to and I want you to also pay attention to these ropes or these strings or whatever they are, the fabric that they're holding as they go around the Maypole, because I'm going to be addressing that. I don't know if I did the last time I gave this presentation on this paper. I'm also going to go out on a limb here and take everything I've learned from Joseph Campbell, and I'm going to say that the labyrinth is also an axis mundi. I had the opportunity to walk or experience some labyrinths in Europe this last year. Unfortunately, the medieval ones, there's very few medieval ones that are in existence. They were all ripped up. Like they didn't want these to survive. But the idea of a labyrinth is very different than a maze. A maze is a place you go to lose yourself. A labyrinth is a place you go to discover yourself, to find the kingdom of heaven within. And they are amazing, guys. I mean, the labyrinths I took, I discovered some things in them. I really did. They are amazing tools for self-discovery. And the idea is that when you go to the very center is the Jerusalem within your heart. It's the inner Jerusalem. This is the axis mundi. So this is what Joseph Campbell has to say about. He doesn't talk about labyrinth, but it's all over in his quote right here, The Power of Myth. Joseph Campbell. He says, the tree of life, the axis mundi, is the central point, the pole around which all revolves. So you guys see where this is connecting, right? With the circle dance of Sukkot, the millennial kingdom, with the North Pole, with the Maypole. The central point of the world is the point where stillness and movement are together. Okay, so this is like you enter the center of the labyrinth, and you're in the point of stillness. You are the movement, you're the energy, but the energy now comes to the stillness of the center. And think about the world is the earth is motionless and it's flat, but we have the firmament above us, right? The stars, that they are the movement that's moving around the central pole. He says movement is time, but stillness is eternity. Realizing how this moment of your life is actually a moment of eternity, and experiencing the eternal aspect of what you are doing in the temporal experience. This is the mythological experience. So he ties a lot of, the mythological experience, guys, like and the thing is you guys know, like, mythology is also religion, right? They've at what point are the scholars going to blend this back together? I wish they would. I don't know whose idea it was. I haven't done a study on that, why they decided to separate mythology from religion when we know that they're the same. So going forward, now we're going to look at Carl Jung, a pipe smoker in his own right. I also went out on a limb here, and I tied Carl Jung with Kabbalah and the chakras, the 7 chakras. And I'm not saying that he's a Kabbalist, but I'm saying, and I'm not a Kabbalist. And it would be a shame, of course, for people to throw out this truth because of the Kabbalists, because again, all the different groups are trying to hold a monopoly on truth. Nevertheless, our spine is a type of Maypole. And there are, of course, 7 different chakras there that represent the 7 firmaments of heaven, the 7 lights of the menorah, the 7 initiations into the the different layers of the mystery religions. It goes on and on and on. Interestingly enough, when a baby is born, they supposedly have 33 vertebrae on the spine. I think an adult has like 25, so some of them fuse together, but there's your 33 number right there. Anyways, this is what Carl Jung has to say. He says, no tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. Now he's talking about the Axis Mundi, the world tree. And of course, he's probably also talking about, not to sound crude, but he's talking about her butt. I mean, really, like, if if that in the chakras, like the very top, the the crown, right? That's like our access way to heaven itself, through the third eye and all that kind of stuff. The lowest point, it goes down to the butt. And I think we've all experienced hell down there at one time. But in reality, it reaches the point of creativity of the unconscious mind, sexual energy. So the point where our sexual energy comes out, it's a very dangerous place because it also represents the unconscious mind. So you could see all that could go wrong there, and why a lot of people have problems with sexuality through the unconscious state. Now, there's another guy named William F. Warren, and I recently read his book. Hunter Tylo was very kind to send me a couple boxes from her personal library, just of her books that I decided to put on my bookshelf. And one of them was Paradise Found by William F. Warren. It was written in 1885. Now, he was the one to put forward the theory that the North Pole was the original Eden. Now, he has some very fascinating ideas about it and why that is. For those of you who follow Zen Garcia, a friend of mine, he wrote a book on that as well, doing a lot more research. The thing that drives me crazy about William F. Warren was the guy, like, he's looking at all this ancient mythology, and he sold them up the creek by saying, well, they were really globe earthers. And it's like, dude, William, no, they were not. They were not globe earthers. That's wishful thinking on your part. They were all, he goes, like, the scholars are wrong to think that they believe the earth was flat. It's like, no, they weren't wrong, Warren. They all believe that until 15 minutes ago, everybody thought the world was flat under a solid dome. So he really misses that up there, and it's unfortunate, but he gets a lot of interesting things right. And this is what he says in Paradise Found. I could have pulled out a lot of quotes from this guy. This guy had a lot of great quotes when he wasn't going on and on and on about globe earth and how great globe earth was. To the first men, if the Garden of Eden was located at the pole, there could have been but one day and one night in a year. Moreover, and think about that, I never thought about that before. Now, by the way, for those of you out there who are adamant that Jerusalem is or Israel, ancient Israel, was the North Pole, and there are some that ideas being pushed out there, it's like, okay, tell me how a day and a night works in the harvest seasons, because like, that doesn't, like, I totally get it with Adam and Eve. I totally get it. Think about this. 7 days for them, a week would have actually been 7 years. Kind of interesting to think about. So let me start from the top. To the first men, if the Garden of Eden was located at the pole, there could have been but one day and one night in a year. Moreover, at the break of that strange day, the sun must have risen not in the east, as in post-diluvian times, but in the south. Do the traditions or sacred books of the ancient world afford any hint of such a sunrise and of such an Eden day? A partial answer to this question is found in the beliefs of the ancient Northmen. A learned Danish writer, which he doesn't give his name, I looked him up. His name was Frederick Klee in his 1847 publication of Les Deluges. He says this, informs us that before the establishment of the present order of the world, the sun, which now rises in the east, rose in the south. So that's kind of interesting right there. Now, that should be a tip-off to the Maypole itself, that it is celebrating the Edenic vision, that every single, if you understand, of course, the Maypole is the north. In every position, all the players coming in are coming in from the south, and they represent the sun coming in in the kickstart of the summer season. Of course, it's not the October pole, it's not the November pole, it's the Maypole, right? Now, and I do want to point out the caution here. So, getting back to Mircea Iliad, what I'm butchering his name, apologies. He talks a lot about the axis mundi as being localized. Now, keep in mind, this is the guy who brought all mythology together. I mean, he's like the father. He understood it very well, and he's like, we need to be cautious about just saying that, you know, every single time there's a mystical mountain, that the ancients didn't really know what they were talking about. They thought this was a mystical mountain, but they're really pointing to the North Pole, right? Because in all different cultures all across the world, they have mystical places where heaven comes down to earth. And so you could see right here in medieval maps, they're always showing how the world revolves around Jerusalem. The reason being is because heaven touches earth in Jerusalem. The Jews have the temple, and of course the Christians had Golgotha, the Mount of Skulls, where the cross, where heaven met the earth at the cross. And he goes through a lot of this here, so I'm not going to cover all that. We do have, but a great example would be Mount Hermon. So that is an axis mundi site, according to the Canaanites and the Sumerians, and we get that backed up with the Watchers in First Enoch 6:6. The Watchers came down there. That is a heaven touch earth place. But we actually have another great example, and that is Jacob's ladder. That is a tradition of the axis mundi. Now, according to the Targum, he saw it on Jerusalem. So there is that, right? So, but anyways, what I love here about Jacob's ladder and William Blake's illustration is that William Blake gets it right. He's showing a coiling double helix, and it actually, when you see the angels going up and down, it actually looks like the Maypole. It's the same kind of approach. And I wrote a whole paper on Chateau de Chambord, and I've personally been there myself. It's a beautiful place, great MK building. And one of the fascinating things there is that they show the coiling double helix going up. Now, that's a huge problem for the official DNA narrative that Francis, was it Crick and Watson? Francis Crick and James Watson discovered it. Was it 1953 or I'm going to get the date wrong. I think it was right around the 1953. They discovered it. And lo and behold, they're actually designing buildings with this going way, way back in medieval times. And the thing is, with this coiling double helix, when you go there, they will tell you this might be the top layer right here. And you could actually see when you get to the top, you go through the firmament, and you could see dragons everywhere. They're telling you that the dragons live up there in the firmament. They give a lot away. These are the seraphim angels. And this coiling double helix is kind of a stairway to heaven. It is an axis mundi that is going up to heaven itself. They actually intended this to be designed like New Jerusalem, and you go up, and when you're on the roof, you're up in the heavenly realm. It's a very beautiful experience. So our very own Sean Walking Bear, this is where we tie in the silver cords. And I saw him earlier tonight. I don't know if he's watching right now. But he wrote a book with us, Tales from a Shaman. We recommend everybody read. It's one of the most. It's a very eye-opening book to the realities of the spiritual realm around us. Just all the fairy creatures and things that live in the woods and so on and so forth. And he had a vision. I've read from this before, so I'm not going to go through this again. But he was like fasting for a few days. He was with members, I think, of he's Cree. He's from the Cree tribe, but I can't remember the members, what tribes he was with. But they were off in the woods. It was this long fast. They were going through this experience where he was lifted up. He basically astral projected, and he saw his silver cord, and he saw the world tree. The tree of life. He talked about seeing let me just read this one paragraph here. He says, in a distance towards the east was a gigantic sparkling tree with a height reaching far above into the night sky. The tree was glowing with a bright yellow Its bark was outlined with multiple glowing lines and wandering lights that flowed along the tree in opposite directions. They resembled stars. It was as if the lines of the tree were being used as highways by these orbs. It was as if I was viewing the sun dance tree for how it spiritually appears and what it represents the world tree. So basically, and he talks about seeing a cosmic curtain there of stars that could be souls. I think that's what the Milky Way is. I think the Platonists were correct in that is the transmigration of souls. It's what we call the Sea of Souls up there, where we're literally looking up at souls up there, I believe. So basically, the cosmic curtain was separated, and he sees the world tree, the tree that is actually there in the north that we can't see with our naked eyes. So there's that. All right, I do want to. Wow, we're coming up on working on time here. I really want to give a talk on this. I'm more skeptical than ever. I actually put the 6 million into the title tonight. I might take it out. Just so you guys know that I've been a seller on Amazon for, 20 years or something like that as a writer. I've been putting up work on there. I just do not like working with Amazon. And they terminated my account this last week, like gone after 20 something years relationship. I mean, they didn't just take down a book or two, they just ended it. Done. Like as a seller. I mean, yeah, I could start a whole new account, but now all those books are flagged, like my books and stuff. And it was over this right here, the truth about the 6 million. So I have now joined the ranks of those that are blacklisted from Amazon. Forbidden writers. And what's amazing about this is that what I did here, I was going to say all I did, but what I did was to take 40 years of newspaper articles and just quote them, just line them up, quote them, and showing how they were, how this 6 million narrative developed long before World War II ever happened. Like, amazing how they knew how this was going to unfold the way it did. And then I go through actual Nazi paperwork. How dare I do that? And showing their records and so on and so forth. And I just blow apart the narrative just by you showing paperwork, right? Which, it's funny. The Germans, they loved paperwork. But what really got to me in this investigation, what really, really hit me hard, was how there is not a single written order for the final solution. Not one. So the one thing I want to leave you guys with tonight, since you guys are looking at some very forbidden literature right here. By the way, I'm not trying to make a sales pitch on you guys, but you guys can get this on my website. So you can get in the store. There's this one guy, if I could find him. Well, so what I was finding was that you have all these official World War II historians. They're very respected guys. And one by one, they start discovering that it's a myth. And they are just then heavily attacked. They lose their credentials. Some of them go to prison. And it's basically like the message is loud and clear. You better not, you better keep to the narrative. Even if you discover it's not true, you just keep lying about it. Well, there's this one guy, his name, he's right here. His name is Rael Hilberg, right here on the right. He's an Austrian-born historian, a Holocaust researcher, one of the most respected in the world, and of course he's a Jew. And at the end of the day, this is the conclusion he came to, because he spent his life, like a lot of these people, trying to find a single written order in Austria, Germany, anywhere. They couldn't even come up with one. They didn't even fake it. They just couldn't find it. And this is what he wrote. What began in 1941 was a process of destruction not planned in advance. All right? He's talking about the final solution. So he's admitting there was no advance planned final solution. It was not organized centrally by any agency. By any agency, he means the German government. There was no blueprints, and there was no budget for destructive measures. What does he mean by destructive measures? You guys know what he means by that. They were taken step by step one step at a time. Thus, because keep in mind, he just admitted there was no final solution ever. So, but he's got to keep to the narrative. And look what he does. Look what hoop he jumps through right here. It's comical. Thus came about not so much a plan being carried out, but an incredible meetings of minds, a consensus mind reading by a far-flung bureaucracy. Telepathy, guys, that's what it was. Mind reading. It all comes down, the entire narrative comes down to telepathy, and apparently they really were like occultists. I mean, they were like the people in the second Planet of the Apes movie. If you ever saw Beneath the Planet of the Apes, how they didn't talk. They just like had these huge brains, and they just like, shot signals back and forth. Apparently that's how it happened. Amazing. So that really blew me away. And hopefully that doesn't take me off the YouTube for talking about that. All right. We're about to get into the reading tonight. And I wanted to give you guys the big news that I told my Discord community last Friday night. And I told you when I went live, I couldn't tell you on here. I still don't feel comfortable telling you on here. It is the most amazing, awesome news. I'm going to have to keep you on your toes. Come back next week. Maybe I could tell you then. But I do want to just remind everybody that we really do need your support here. For me to continue doing this, even the interviews that I bring, I brought on Dave Weiss, Flat Earth Dave, yesterday. We had a really great talk about Artemis 2 and the trip into space around the moon, all that kind of stuff. And a lot more guests I'm going to be bringing on, continuing my research, all that kind of stuff, doing my studies, running this. So we need your support. So please consider doing that. So this is Give, Send, Go. You can always Patreon. I really think the Tech Book Club is the way to go. But this as well, if you want to give here, you can see our budget that we need to meet. All right. Yahawaha. From the Paleo Hebrew, that's Paleo Leviticus. So this week is brought to you by this meme. Trump agrees to ceasefire with Iran. Bunny wants to still bomb them anyways. I have to say, in the history of Western civilization, one of the weirdest things happened in the media this last week when you have I mean, I'm going to try to get through this without laughing. I mean, I couldn't even believe I was watching this, that you have Trump up there in the White House, standing on the balcony, saying he's, threatening to annihilate Iran, just send him back to the Stone Age. And he's got the Easter Bunny standing right there. Next, it's just like, you can't watch that footage without going like, what is going on in the world today? And I think that long live this meme. I think this meme says it all. And I hope to see this for many years used for many different statements. So you have this is the actual Easter Bunny that was standing on the porch with him. I guess they're doing like an egg hunt here. And then we have this great picture right here. So that, I don't know what better expresses the world we live in right now than this. So let's open tonight, 49 minutes into this, with Yahawaha's prayer from the Paleo. Our Father, set apart is your name, and your royal dominion, your pleasure, your delight, you will exist in Shamayam and in Arats. And give us our bread continually, and pardon our faults, our sins and missteps, in the same manner in which we forgive those who commit faults, sins, missteps against us. And all do not bring us into the hands of testing, but guard us from all evil. Amen. All right, so we're going to be reading through 12, 13, 14, I think maybe 15. Starting out with the purification of women. And Yahawaha, the ever-living, set words in order toward Al-Mashaha to declare, set words in order toward the sons of Yashua to declare, if a woman should conceive seed, and she should bring forth a male, then she shall be unclean 7 days, like the days of the menstrual uncleanness for her languishing sickness. She will be unclean. On the 8th, he shall be circumcised the flesh of his foreskin. So keep in mind, obviously, gone through the 7 days of uncleanness. when the baby is being circumcised on the 8th day, that the mother is clean at this time. And 33 days, so this is interesting, we see a 33 number right here. I'll be talking about this. 33 days she shall remain in the blood of her cleansing. She shall not reach out to touch against anything kudash, and she shall not come toward the makudash until the day of her cleansing become full. So this would, of course, be 40 days in total. And conditionally, should she bring forth a nukubaha, that would be a female, a girl, then she shall be unclean 2 sevens. So 2 weeks, 14 days, like the separation for menstrual uncleanness, and she shall remain 66 days in the blood of her cleansing. Is that interesting? So we see, of course, there's 66 books in canon. We see 66, 33. So, I was reading up on Sepharia today on all their commentary. And usually the rabbinical community has a lot to say on scripture. This is one of those passages where they're kind of like they don't know. Like they just sit around and go like, why? What is it about men that are 7 days and women that are 14? Why? Now, I know what some of you are thinking. They're like, no, you need to read Jubilees chapter 3. Yeah, I'm going to read that tonight. But Jubilees 3, it gives a very interesting explanation for, or a connection, I should say, between Adam and Eve and this practice, but it does not explain the beginnings of the Torah. The Torah is eternal, and it predates Adam and Eve, and so not even Jubilees seems to give me a clear answer on why this is. I'm just telling you, I don't know. I'm telling you that. So if I pretended like, maybe some people, claimed they know, give me their answers, because not even the rabbinical community can figure this out. But anyways, we'll get there. And when the days of her purification for a son, or perhaps for a daughter, are fulfilled, then she shall bring a lamb, a son of his first year, for an ascending offering, and a son of a dove, or perhaps a turtle dove, for a sin offering toward the entrance of the tent of meeting toward the priest. And he shall bring near to the face of Yahawaha, the ever-living, and he shall make a covering over her, and she shall be made clean from the fountain of her blood. This is the Torah for her bringing forth for a male, or perhaps for a female. And conditionally, if her hand cannot attain a lamb, then she shall take 2 turtle doves, or perhaps 2 sons of doves or pigeons, and the one is for a sin offering, and the priest shall make a covering over her, and she shall be made clean. So now we're going to get into purification laws for contagious diseases. Now this is an interesting chapter because it has opposites. Like it starts out in the actually, you know what? That's chapter 14. Well, let's go ahead and read. This is about leprosy. And Yahawaha, the ever-living, set words in order toward Al-Mashahad to declare, if Adam or Adam shall exist with the skin of his flesh having a rising, or rather a scab, or perhaps a white spot, and shall exist in the skin of his flesh the calamity of leprosy, then he shall be brought to the priest, or perhaps toward one of his sons, the Kohens, or the Kahanuyam. And the priest shall inspect the mark in the skin of the flesh. And should the hair be turned white, and the appearance of the plague be deeper than the skin of his flesh, it is the spot of leprosy. And the priest shall inspect him and pronounce it. Excuse me, got something in my throat. All right, let's. I can't even talk now, but let's keep it up anyways. It was so weird, like something just like a little bug or something went in my throat. And the priest shall inspect him and pronounce him unclean. Oh, the glories of being alive. Let me get another drink. And conditionally, if the white spot should be in the skin of his flesh, and it be not deeper in appearance than the upper portion of the skin, and the hair be not turned white, then the priest shall shut away the man affected with spots for 7 days. And the priest shall observe him on the 7th day, and behold, should the spot persist in his sight, the spot not spreading out, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days for a second time. And the priest shall inspect him again on the 7th day, and behold, should the spot become weaker, and the plague has not spread out on the skin, the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is a scab or an eruption, and he shall wash his clothes and be purified. But conditionally, should the scab or eruption spread out greatly in the skin after he has been observed by the priest for cleansing, then he shall be inspected against by the priest. And if the priest shall inspect, and behold, the scab or eruption has spread out in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is leprosy. If the mark of leprosy exists upon a man, and he is brought toward the priest, and the priest shall observe, and behold, there is a white rising in the skin, and it has turned the hair white, and there is an indication of living flesh in the rising, it is a languid, wearisome leprosy in the skin of his flesh. And the priest shall pronounce him unclean, and shall not shut him up, for he is unclean. And conditionally, should the leprosy break out, spread abroad in the skin, and the leprosy shall cover over all the skin with the spot from his, and even unto his foot, he shall show all to the eyes of the eye of the priest. Then upon the priest's inspection, and behold, the leprosy has covered all his flesh, then he shall pronounce clean the spot, for his entirety has turned white. He is clean. But in the day when living flesh appears in him, he shall be unclean. And the priest shall observe the living flesh and shall pronounce him unclean. The living flesh is unclean, it is leprosy. Or perhaps if the living flesh ceases and turns white again, he shall come toward the priest. When the priest shall inspect him, and behold, the spot be turned into white, then the priest shall pronounce him clean, that has the plague. He is clean. And if there exists in the flesh an inflamed ulcer, and it is healed, and should a white rising exist in the place of the inflamed ulcer, or rather a reddish white spot, it shall be shown toward the priest. And the priest shall inspect, and behold, from observation it appears depressed, lower than other parts of the skin, and the hair be turned white. The priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a calamity of leprosy. It has broken out with an inflamed ulcer. But if the priest should inspect it, and behold, in her there is no white hairs, and it is not depressed or lower than the other part of the skin, but there is a weakening, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. And conditionally, should it spread abroad in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the calamity. But conditionally, should the white spot endure in place, not spread abroad, it is a rough place, an inflamed ulcer, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. Or perhaps, should the flesh exist hot, a burned place in the skin, and the indication of the burned spot exists reddish white or perhaps white, and the priest shall look upon her, and behold, the hair in the burned spot be turned white, and the portion of her appearance be deeper than the skin, it is leprosy. It has broken out in the burned spot. Then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the mark of leprosy. But conditionally, should the priest inspect her, and behold, there is not white hair in the white patch of skin, and that part be not deeper than the skin, it is weak, failing, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. And the priest shall inspect him on the 7th day. If it has spread over the skin, the priest shall declare him unclean. It is the mark of leprosy. But conditionally, if the white spots stay in place, has not spread abroad in the skin, but it weakens, it is a rising of the burned spot. Then the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is an inflammation of the burn spot. Now, you notice here we're talking about kind of a lot of different things. This paragraph, 24 through 28, is talking about a burn spot and something that results from a burn that has happened on the skin. So it has been my position in the past that leprosy is a spiritual condition, that it is not connected with necessarily the leprosy we see today. That was probably a bit of a half-truth. There's a lot of spiritual conditions that we're seeing in here, but it also appears like this term leprosy, now I'm no doctor, okay, but it could be that they're not necessarily placing modern medical conditions upon this, because we see a lot, again, of different descriptions happening here. So we're about to see baldness, and then we're going to see an interesting thing on beards. So, and if a man or perhaps a woman, there shall exist in him a mark upon the head or upon the beard, and the priest shall inspect the spot, and behold, its appearance be deeper than the skin, and in him a thin yellow hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. Some people have speculated that this is talking about a fungus, a type of fungal condition in the beard, which has no forbearance on the other conditions that have been brought forward. You see what I'm saying? But they're all basically like talking about the leprosy. It is a scab of leprosy upon the head or perhaps the beard. And if the priest inspect the mark of the scab, and behold, in his appearance it is not deeper than the rest of the skin, and there is not a black hair in him, then shall the priest shut up him that had the mark of a scab for 7 days. And the priest has observed the mark on the seventh day, and behold, the scab has not spread, and there does not exist in him a yellow hair, and in appearance the scab is not deeper than the other parts of the skin, then he shall be shaved, and the scab he shall not shave, and the priest shall shut up him that has the scab for 7 days more. I was reading some comments around this. On this section right here, I don't know what to make of this. I mean, all I can tell you is what I was reading, right? That some of the, I guess, the earliest depictions of Hebrews that we find, say, in Egypt and the surrounding area, is that they were a dark-haired people. That there wasn't a lot of maybe blondish, red-headed people. Now, again, I don't know. I wasn't there. According to some texts we have, like the writings of Abraham, Sarah, who was Abraham's wife, was blonde. A lot of people speculate that David was perhaps a redhead. And then there's other people that will freak out about that because apparently red hair is a sign of being a Nephilim or whatever. So I guess all the Irish people, they're screwed. They're all Nephilim, I guess. But some people have commented on this, that this is a sign that being blonde-headed was so rare in their culture that they could actually put this into the Torah of, if it's like, yellow hair, right? Like if, there does not exist yellow hair in them. And on the seventh day, the priest shall inspect the scab, and behold, if the scab is not spread abroad, and appearance is not deeper than the other part of the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean, and he shall wash his garments and be clean. But conditionally, should the scab be greatly spread in the skin after his cleansing, and the priest examine him, and behold, the scab is spread in the skin, the priest shall not inspect for the yellow hair. He is unclean. But conditionally, if in his eyes the scab stand, and there is a black hair growth in him, the scab is healed, he is clean, the priest shall declare him clean. And if there exists in the skin of a man or perhaps a woman white spots, bright white spots, and the priest has inspected, and behold, in the skin, their flesh has white spots that are failing, becoming white. It is a harmless eruption breaking out in the skin. He is clean. And if a man's head has become smooth, he is bald, he is clean. And conditionally, if from the, a lot of men out there are going like, oh, relief right now because, they're bald. But yeah, you're clean. You're good. And conditionally, if from the region toward his face, his hair has fallen out, he is bald on the front part. He is clean. But if a spot exists on the bald head or the bald front part, a very reddish white spot, it is leprosy sprouted upon his bald head or perhaps his bald front part. And the priest shall inspect him, and behold, if the rising has a spot very red or reddish white upon his bald front part, like the leprosy of the skin of the flesh, he is a leprous man. He is unclean. The priest shall pronounce him very unclean. His disease is upon his head. And the leprous which has upon him the spot, his garment shall exist torn, and his head shall exist unbound, naked, and he shall cover over his lip, and he shall call out, unclean, unclean. All the days which the mark is upon him, he shall be polluted, unclean, contaminated. He shall dwell alone from outside of the encampment. Thus shall his habitation be. And if a garment exists with the spot of leprosy in him, either in a garment of wool, or perhaps in a garment of linen, or perhaps in the warp, or perhaps the woof of linen cotton. You guys know what the warp of the woof is, right? It's like the top, the cross, it's the stitching. Or of wool, or perhaps in skin, or perhaps in anything fashioned of skin. And should the mark exist greenish or yellowish, or perhaps reddish in the garment, or perhaps in the skin, or perhaps in the warp, or perhaps in the woof, or perhaps in any article of skin, it is the mark of leprosy. And the priest shall examine her, and the priest will examine the spot of leprosy, and he shall shut up the thing with the spot for 7 days. Isn't it interesting how this big emphasis on the 7 days, right? Like 7 days of creation, 7,000 years of history, and then, of course, the 8th great day, the final cleansing. And if on the 7th day, after inspecting the mark on the garment, or perhaps in the warp, or perhaps in the woof, or perhaps in the skin of all that which is fashioned of skin for work of service, then the spot is a sour leprosy, it is unclean. And the garment shall be burned, or perhaps the woof in wool, or perhaps in linen things, or perhaps any article made of skin in which exists a plague spot from a bitter, sour leprosy, it shall be burned in fire. But conditionally, should the priest examine, and behold, the plague spot has not spread in the garment, or perhaps in the warp, or perhaps in the woof, or perhaps in any articles made of skin, then the priest shall command, and they shall wash the article which has in him the spot, and he shall shut him up 7 days for the second time. And the priest shall examine after washing the spot, and behold, if the spot has not changed in his eye, and the spot has not spread, it is unclean. He shall burn it in the fire. It is a depression producing barrenness behind or perhaps in the front part. And conditionally, should the priest inspect it, and behold, the plague spot become weaker after washing him, then he shall tear it away from the other portions of the garment, or perhaps out of the skin, or perhaps out of the warp, or perhaps out of the woof. But conditionally, in the woof, or perhaps in any article of skin, it is a spreading plague. He shall burn in fire that which has the plague spot in him, and the garment, or perhaps the warp, or perhaps the woof, or perhaps any article of skin which is washed. If the plague spot depart from them, then it shall be washed a second time and shall be clean. This is the Torah of the mark of leprosy in garments of wool, or perhaps linen ones, or perhaps in any article of skin, to pronounce him clean, or perhaps to pronounce him unclean. So isn't it interesting that, I read this and I see Yahshua Messiah all over this. That he went into the outer darkness. He went into the, basically outside of the camp in a way, by becoming the Word made flesh and coming to this earth. And he went around and, I sometimes wonder, because, you read this and it seems like the priests aren't really cleansing people here. They're pronouncing people clean or unclean. It doesn't seem like they are, the way this is being described to me, it doesn't seem like they're practitioners of health, like they're, medical doctors of the day. I personally think, though, Yahshua came to show us how to interpret the Torah. And it seemed to me like he was going around, he's our high priest, and he was going around to the sick, to the diseased, and he was healing them. He was a great physician, and he was showing the way. And so I think that if some of these Levite priests, and I'm just throwing my opinion out there at this time, but if they had the true heart of the Father, as they're going outside of the camp to inspect these sick, that they are doing what was in their power and their knowledge, which might have been very advanced knowledge. We really don't know. Certainly way beyond what we have in Western medicine today, for sure, that they were doing the best they could to actually cleanse the people. And this is the vision of the millennial kingdom, right? To heal the nations, to be kings and priests, to heal the nations. The Torah for the cleansing of lepers, chapter 14. And Yahawaha, the ever-living, set words in order toward Al-Mashahah to declare, this is the Torah of the leper in the day of his cleansing. And he shall be brought toward the priest, and the priest shall go forth toward the outside of the encampment, and shall examine, and behold, the plague spot of leprosy be healed out of the leper. And the priest shall command, and shall take for the one to be cleansed 2 clean living birds, and cedar wood, and crimson worm crimson, and azaub, which is hyssop. And the priest shall command, and shall slaughter one of the birds toward an earthen vessel over living water. As I read this right here, I wish I would have actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm regretting not doing a deeper study on this portion right here, because this actually resembles the Azazel goat and the Yahawaha goat. So on the Day of Atonement, of course, that's what the high priest would do for the sins of Israel. But this is something very similar, where the rabbis talk about this bird that has to be captured, this living bird. It would have to be a wild bird, because the idea is that if it's like a homing pigeon or something like that, it's going to return again, right? Like a dove or something like that. Think of Noah's Ark, right? And so it would need to be a wild bird, because you're attributing basically your sickness onto this. You don't want it to return. The living birds, he shall take her, and the cedar wood, and the crimson worm crimson, and the hyssop, and shall immerse them in the living bird in the blood of the bird slaughtered over living water. So remember, one bird is slaughtered, another is going to be released. And he shall sprinkle 7 strokes of the anvil over the cleansed from leprosy, and shall pronounce him clean, and shall send out the living bird into the face of the field. And the cleansed shall wash his garments, and shall shave all his hair, and shall wash in water, and be cleansed. And afterwards he shall come toward the encampment, and shall settle down to dwell from outside of his tent 7 days. And he shall exist on the 7th day. He shall shave all his hair, his beard, and his bearded chin, and his eyebrows, and all his hair. And he shall wash his flesh in water. Then he shall be clean. And on the 8th day, he shall, it's kind of interesting, the idea of shaving our hair too, that our hair kind of holds information. So I would just think that it's, it's kind of related to like a Nazarite vow, right? And it's just getting that clean slate. And on the 8th day, he shall take 2 lambs, perfect whole sound, and 1 ewe lamb, a daughter of a year, perfect whole sound, and 3/10 part of fine flour as a gift offering, oil poured over, and a lag of oil, which is the smallest of liquid measurements. And the priest pronouncing the cleansing shall stand the man to be cleansed, and those to the face of Yahawaha the ever-living at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And the priest shall take the 1 lamb, and shall bring him near for a guilt offering, and the lag of oil, and shall wave them for a waving to the face of Yahawaha. And he shall slaughter the lamb in the standing place, where he shall slaughter the sin offering and the ascending offering in the Kudash standing place. Just like the sin offerings, the guilt offering is for the priests. It is most set apart. And the priest shall take from the blood of the guilt offering, and the priest shall gift it upon the lobe of the right ear of the cleansed, and upon the thumb of his right hand, and upon the great toe of his right foot. Now, notice in the past when I talked about the Butler, Pennsylvania, was that 2024? The assassination attempt? I forget. 2020. Yeah, it was 2024. How the time is passing us by. It's been 2 years. And again, however you view that, right? Whether it was real or hoax or imagined in our, collective consciousness, whatever, that it appeared to resemble a Levite ceremony. However, you see the same thing kind of happening right here. And in this case, it's somebody who is coming from outside the camp back in, kind of initiating them back into the camp. So kind of interesting here too. And the priest shall take from the lag of oil, and he shall pour out into the curved hollow of the priest's own left hand. And the priest shall dip his right finger into part of the oil which is in his left hand, and with his finger shall sprinkle part of the oil 7 strokes of the anvil to the face of Yahawaha the ever-living. And the remainder of the oil which is in his hand, the priest shall gift upon the lobe of the right ear of the cleansed, and upon the thumb on his right hand, and upon the great toe of his right foot, upon the blood of the guilt offering. And the remainder of the oil which is in the priest's hand he shall gift upon the head of the cleansed. And the priest shall make a covering atonement over him to the face of Yahawaha the ever-living. And the priest shall fashion the sin offering, and shall make a covering atonement over the cleansed from his uncleanness. And afterwards he shall slaughter the ascending. And the priest shall send up the ascending offering and the gift offerings upon the altar. And the priest shall make a covering atonement over him, and he shall be clean. And conditionally, should he be poor, weak, hanging by a thread, and his hand is not able to attain unto these, then he shall take 1 lamb for a guilty offering to be waved, to make a covering atonement over him, and 1/10 part of fine flour or meal with oil poured over for a gift offering and a lag of oil, and 2 turtle doves, or perhaps 2 sons of doves or pigeons, whatever he can acquire with his hand, and 1 shall exist as a sin offering, and the 1 for an ascending offering. And he shall bring them toward the priest on the 8th day for his cleansing, toward the priest, toward the entrance of the tent of meeting to the face of Yahawaha the ever-living. And the priest shall take the guilt offerings and the lag of oil, and he shall wave up and down them as a waving to the face of Yahawaha. And he shall slaughter the lamb of the guilt offering, and the priest shall take from the blood of the guilt offering, and shall gift it upon the lobe of the right ear of the cleansed, and upon the great toe of his right foot. And a portion of the oil the priest shall pour into the curved hollow of the priest's own left hand, and the priest shall sprinkle with his right forefinger a portion of the oil that is upon the curved hollow of his left hand 7 strokes of the anvil to the face of Yahawaha the ever-living. And the priest shall gift a portion of the oil which is in the curved hollow upon the lobe of the right ear of the cleansed, and upon the thumb of the right hand, upon the great toe of his right foot, upon the standing place of the blood of the guilt offering. And the remaining portion of the oil which is upon the curved hollow of the priest's hand, he shall gift upon the head of the cleansed, to make a covering atonement over him to the face of Yahawaha the ever-living, and shall fashion the 1 out of the turtle doves, or perhaps the son of a dove or pigeon, from that which his hand can attain, even which his hand is able to reach, 1 for a sin offering, and the 1 for the ascending offering. And the priest shall make a covering atonement over the cleansed to the face of Yahawaha the ever-living. This is the Torah of him which has on him the plague spot of leprosy, whose hand is not able to attain these with his cleansing. The Torah for the cleansing of a leprous house or leprous houses. And Yahawaha, the ever-living, set words in order toward Al-Mashahah and toward Al-Aaron to declare, if you come toward the land of Canaan, which I give you for a possession, and I give the plague of leprosy in a house of the land of your possession, then him who the house belongs shall come and conspicuously in the sight of all shall declare, it appears to me that a mark of leprosy is in the house. So it seems like you have like the head of the household kind of taking charge for this, right? Even if he doesn't have leprosy himself. And the priest shall command, and they shall clear the house before the priest goes to examine the plague spot, so that everything in the house does not become unclean. And following that, in this manner shall the priest inspect the house. And he shall inspect the plague spot, and behold, if the plague spot be in the walls of the house, having places sunk into the walls, pale, greenish, yellow, perhaps red earth reddish, and in appearance lower, depressed than other portions of the wall, then the priest shall go out from the entrance of the house and shall shut up the house 7 days. And the priest shall turn back on the 7th day and shall examine, and behold, if the plague spot be spread on the walls of the house, then the priest shall command that he take away the stones which have the plague spot on them, and the priest shall cast them away toward the outside of the town, toward an unclean standing place. And the house shall be scraped from inside and a circuit round about, and they shall pour out the dust which they scraped off toward the outside of the village, toward an unclean standing place. And he shall take other stones and bring them in the place of the stones, and with other clay or loam shall he overlay the house. I mean, what are they talking about here? Mold? And conditionally, if the plague spot return and break out in the house after he has taken away the stones, and after he has scraped the house, and after it has been overlaid, then the priest shall enter, and behold, if the plague spot be spread in the house, it is a sour, bitter leprosy in the house. It is unclean. And he shall destroy the house, tearing out the stones and all the mortar of the house, and he shall carry them out toward the outside of the village, toward an unclean standing place. And anyone going toward the house in the days he is shut up shall be unclean until the Arab. And any lying down in the house shall wash his garments, and whoever eats in the house shall wash his garments. And conditionally, if the priest, upon coming to inspect, observe that, behold, the plague spot has not spread in the house after it was overlain, the priest shall pronounce the house clean, for the house is healed of the plague spot. And he shall take for cleansing the house, the 2 birds, and cedar wood, and crimson worm crimson, and azab. And he shall slaughter one of the birds towards an earthenware vessel over living water. And he shall take the cedar wood and the hyssop and the crimson worm crimson and the living bird, and shall dip them in the blood of the slaughtered bird and in the living water, and shall sprinkle it toward the house 7 strokes of the anvil, and shall cleanse the house with the blood of the bird and with the living water and with the living bird and with the cedar wood and with the hyssop and with the crimson worm crimson. And he shall send away the living bird toward the outside of the village, toward the face of the plain, and shall make a covering atonement over the house, and it shall be clean. This is the Torah for all plague spots of leprosy, and for scab, and for leprosy of a garment and of a house, and for a rising, and for a scab, and for a white spot, to send out the hand in the day it is unclean, and in the day it is clean. This is the laws, the Torahs, or the Thu'urath for leprosy. And then we get into the Torah for discharges. So this is the last chapter. And as I started to say before, and I had to correct myself before because I realized it was last, it's written in an order where it goes like, let's see, negative, positive, positive, negative. And Yahawaha, the ever-living, set words in order toward Al-Mashahah to declare, set words in order toward the sons of Yashruel, and saying to them, if any man exists having a flow or discharge from his flesh, he is unclean. I've seen this kind of, interpreted or thought of in different ways, but I personally suspect this is like some sort of like gonorrhea or something like that. Like we're talking about what we'd call a sexually transmitted disease. And so as it is probably with a lot of this leprosy, it is, now this isn't, I guess, leprosy here, right? But it is a state of uncleanness that would have been a result of some sort of sin in this individual's life, doing something that he was not supposed to be doing, or she. And this shall exist as his uncleanness in his discharge, whether his flesh flows with his discharge, or perhaps his flesh has sealed up from his discharge. It is his uncleanness. Any bed upon which he who has the discharge lies down upon is contaminated, unclean. and any article upon which he sits down shall be contaminated, unclean. And the man who touches against his bed shall wash his garments and wash in water, and shall be unclean until the Arab. And any sitting upon any article whereon he who has the discharge has sat down upon shall wash his clothes and wash in water, and be contaminated, unclean until Arab. And if any touch against the flesh of him who has the discharge, he shall wash his clothes and wash in water, and be contaminated, unclean until Arab. And if he who has the discharge should spit upon any which is clean, it becomes contaminated, unclean until Arab. And he shall wash his garments and wash in water, and be contaminated, unclean until Arab. And any seat which he who has the discharge be carried on or rides upon shall be contaminated, unclean. And any that touches against on anything which existed beneath him shall be contaminated, unclean until Arab. And he that lifts up or carries them shall wash his garments and wash in water, and be contaminated, unclean until Arab. And any who touches upon him that has the discharge, and his hands not washed with an abundant overflowing water, then he shall wash his garments and wash in water, and be contaminated, unclean until Arab. And the earthenware vessel which he touches upon him that has the discharge, he shall break, and any vessel of wood shall be washed in water. And if he that has a discharge is cleansed from his flow, then inscribe upon a roll counting to himself 7 days for a cleansing, and shall wash by treading his garments, and wash his flesh in living water, and shall be clean. And on the 8th day he shall take for himself 2 turtle doves, or perhaps sons of doves or pigeons, and shall come to the face of Yahawaha the ever-living toward the entrance of the tent of meeting, and gift them toward the priest. And the priest shall fashion them, the one for a sin offering, and the one for an ascending offering. And the priest shall make a covering atonement over him to the face of Yahawaha the ever-living from his discharge. So now we're kind of switching the scenario. So we're going into something now that is, the first was a negative, wholly negative experience. And the next is a being unclean, but not by, just so somebody out there needs to hear this, that just because you're unclean does not make you a sinner. It is not necessarily sin to be unclean. We go through our whole lives fluctuating between cleanness and uncleanness. Is what we do in our cleanness or uncleanness that could be a transgression of the Torah. And, I think that probably, if we're all being honest, the clean and unclean laws, and I'm not talking about dietary, but the stuff we're reading here is probably the stuff that all of us have to work on the most, and recognizing that this idea of being clean and unclean is very important to Yah. I mean, he wrote a book on it, right? So of the 5 books that Moses wrote through Yah, this was one of them. And if any man's seed of effusion go out from him, then he shall wash in water all his flesh, and be clean until Arab. So this is, of course, talking about a man's secretion, his seed. And this could be, this could be just sexual with your woman, right? And any garment and any skin upon which exists the seed of effusion, you shall wash with water, and shall be unclean until Arab. And a woman with whom a man lies down with, in whom a man poured the pouring of seed, shall wash with water, and be unclean until Arab. So just, how do you apply this? It's pretty straightforward for everyone out there who is married, and you have a woman, or a woman you have a man, and you have sexual intercourse. This is how you're supposed to treat it with your sheets and whatever you're wearing, whatever, you just wash it. You wash yourself as well. And if a woman, and the thing is, someone out there is going to be like, well, that takes all the dirty out of sex, right? Well, and no pun intended. Actually, that was an intended pun. Now that I think about it, I think it's awesome to think about sex in terms of being a priest and actually have it be a holy act. This is something that we have time and again in discussions that I have, like if I go to Mary Magdalene or whatever, people always fall back ultimately. I shouldn't say always, but they fall back ultimately into the position that sex is less than holy. That's not true at all. But we can do it in a way that it is very unholy. And if a woman exists having a discharge, if there exists blood with her discharge in her flesh, then she will exist in impurity 7 days, and all touching upon her shall be unclean until Arab. And all that she lied upon in her impurity shall be unclean, and all which she sits down upon him shall be unclean. And any who touch upon her bed, he shall wash his garments, and wash in water, and be unclean until Arab. And all who touch upon any article upon which she has sat shall wash his garments in water, and be clean until the Arab. And conditionally, if she be upon, or perhaps the article she sits down upon and touching against him, he shall be unclean until Arab. This is one of those two. I just like, let's take this seriously, right? Let's just live a life of cleanliness. And conditionally, should any man indeed lie down with her, and her impurity exist upon him, he shall be unclean 7 days. And all the bed upon which he lie down shall be unclean. And if a woman indeed have a discharge of her blood a great many days, so, just recognize in her time of month, you're going to be unclean too. And, act accordingly. And if a woman indeed have a discharge of her blood a great many days beyond the time of impurity, or perhaps if she flow for a long period beyond the time of her impurity, she is unclean. Any bed upon which she lies, all the days of her discharge shall be like the bed of her impurity, and shall exist unclean to her. And any article she sits upon shall exist unclean, like the uncleanness of her impurity. And any touching against them, he shall be unclean, and shall wash in water, and be unclean until Arab. And conditionally, if she be cleansed from her discharge, then she shall inscribe upon a tablet, counting to herself 7 days, and after that she shall be clean. And on the 8th day she shall take unto her 2 turtle doves, or 2 sons of doves, or pigeons, and shall bring them toward the priest, toward the entrance of the tent of meeting. And the priest shall fashion the one for a guilt offering, and the one for an ascending offering, and so make a covering atonement over her to the face of Yahawaha, the ever-living, from the discharge of her impurity. And he shall separate the sons of Yashro from their uncleanness, including my Mashkan dwelling place, which is among them. These are the Thu-Urath of the discharge, and from him whose seed of pouring out goes out from him for making unclean therein. And her who is languid, wretched, sick in her impurity, and for him for the flow of his discharge, for the male and for the female, and of the man that lies down with her who is unclean. And this concludes the reading of this week's Torah portion. I survived it again. Let me take a drink. All right. With what little time we have left, as you can see, I'm on page 18 of 61 pages of notes, and I brought it down from like 100 pages down to 61. I've been trying to be more disciplined, trying very hard. So here we have a picture of Adam and Eve, and I told you I was going to go through Jubilees, and this is what it says here. This is from Jubilees chapter 3. Do I want to read the whole thing? Okay. So, the story. Yahawaha says it's not good for Adam to be alone, yada, yada. And so he awakened Adam out of his sleep. And on awaking, he rose on the 6th day, and he brought her to him, Eve, and he knew her, and said unto her, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called my wife, because she was taken from her husband. Therefore shall man and wife be one, and therefore shall man leave his father and his mother and cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. In the first week was Adam created, and the rib his wife. In the 2nd week he showed her unto him. And for this reason the commandment was given to keep in their defilement for a male 7 days, and for a female twice 7 days. So boom, there you go. They're talking about Leviticus. Now again, I don't know that this really explains this. To me, it's setting up this idea that there is a heavenly law, that Yah has a very specific way of doing things, that it would just make sense that he would introduce Eve in this way, right? So it doesn't really explain the ultimate purpose for it, but it does give a hint at something else. But let me just keep reading. And after Adam had completed 40 days in the land where he had been created, we brought him into the Garden of Eden to till and keep it. But his wife they brought in on the 8th day, and after this she entered into the Garden of Eden. And for this reason the commandment is written on the heavenly tablets in regard to her that gives birth. If she bears a male, she shall remain in her uncleanness 7 days, according to the first week of days, and 30 and 3 days shall she remain in the blood of her purifying, and she shall not touch any hallowed thing, nor enter into the sanctuary, until she accomplishes these days which are enjoined in the case of a male child. But in the case of a female child, she shall remain in her uncleanness 2 weeks of days, according to the first 2 weeks, and 66 days in the blood of her purification, and they will be in all 80 days. Therefore, there was ordained regarding her who bears a male or a female child the statute of those days that she should touch no hollow thing, and so on and so forth. All right. So when I was reading through this in preparation for the study, again, I told you that the rabbis, I mean, just centuries and centuries of them, they're like, yeah, we can't really figure this out. Again, they can point to Jubilees, but that still doesn't explain it. It actually doesn't. The way the Torah is not set up, like Yah didn't go like, I like that I introduced Eve, 7 days later. So I'm going to do that for all humanity now. Like, no, that's not the way it worked. However, so one of the things that some of the rabbinical community has commented upon, they're like, well, the reason the male is brought out by the 8th day is because they're looking for the Messiah, right? And I know some of us would like roll our eyes at that, but I think that there's something to that. Each one of us are called to the Edenic vision, and there is, we talk about. I'll speak for myself. I talk a lot about the second Eve because we talk about Yahshua being the second or the last Adam. In the same way that there was also a second Eve. Was it Mary the mother? Yes. Was it Mary Magdalene? Yes. However, that's a calling for each one of us, right? The women are called to be a redeemed Eve, and men are called to be Adam, not the fallen nature, but the redeemed, right? And this is, of course, why we follow in Yahshua's footsteps. And so it seems to me that this is why the pattern of children, male and female, are set up in the same way as Adam and Eve. We are all called to the Edenic vision to be kings and priests on this earth. So I think that's a beautiful picture. I don't know about you. Now, this is I was able to find this. This is an actual historical photo of Yahshua being dedicated at the temple. Don't ask me how I got it. But yeah, there it is right there, in case you ever wondered what the scene looked like. And of course, we see that the same thing happened with Yahshua in the Gospel of Luke. When the 8 days until his circumcision had passed, he goes and he is then dedicated to temple. So they're acting out Leviticus here. So yeah, apparently poor Mary Magdalene there. Unclean Mary Magdalene. Actually, in this case, it was because he was so clean, right? That he's like, don't touch me. But I was talking with my group recently about this, and if you didn't tune in to my Mary Magdalene discussion, that's okay. My video I did about a month ago. But one of the passages I talked about was the Gospel of Thomas, and the 114th saying specifically. It is this saying right here that is so provocative that generally why people reject this book. But I'm about to clear the air on this. So Simon Kepha says to them, so he notices once again Mary Magdalene walking up. She is the disciple whom he loves, and he's always just really upset whenever she comes around. We see the same scene at the end of the Gospel of John and so on and so forth. And he says, we see it in the Gospel of Yesu, the Chinese traditions, all across the board. Peter is always locking heads with Mary Magdalene. And he says, let Miriam go away from us, for women are not worthy of life. Where's he getting this from? We see that within Jewish culture, based on this text we just read in Leviticus, maybe a couple others, they saw women as less human, right? So women were, men, right? They just have 7 days of uncleanness and they're circumcised, they're good to go. But women, it's not just a 40 days of uncleanness for the mother. It's now, doubling that. And Yahshua says this, look, I will draw her in so as to make her male, so that she too may become a living male spirit, similar to you. But I say to you, every woman who makes herself male will enter the kingdom of heaven. So one of the things that was really helpful for me in understanding this, I was reading from a French translator. He's one of the most respected translators of the Nag Hammadi text. And he said, he confessed, he's like, you know what, translators, they put male in here just to be provocative. And it does unfortunately, the text a grave injustice. They're trying to make it provocative to get people to go like, what? But in doing so, people reject the text. And when he says here that the word that's being used is anthropos, all right, so that's where we get like anthropology, the study of humanity. It's the word for human. All right, so this is what's happening. If Yahshua is agreeing with Peter, Peter's like, she's not worthy of life. She's a woman. She shouldn't be following us into the kingdom. And Yahshua's like, you're right, Peter. You know, women have no place in the kingdom. Don't worry, she'll become a man. If that is what he's saying, then it's the first time in the history of the communication, the negotiation, I guess, between Yahshua and Peter, that he actually agrees with them, because Yahshua is always turning the table, right? And believe it or not, he's doing it right here. So what he's actually saying, he's like, hey, don't worry, Peter. I will draw her in to make her human, a true human, a real person, the true, the ultimate person, that she too may become a living spirit. And so what he's doing here is he's putting the tension on Peter now. He's like, the question is, Peter, are you going to become anthropos? Are you going to become a true human? Because it has nothing to do with men or women in this instance. It's being the true anthropos. Now, it is interesting that we see the same thing put here in Galatians. Paul always gets away with it. Paul always gets a free pass. If you say the same things Paul says in other texts, people are like, no, that's not true, even though they love Paul, right? And he says, for you are all children of Elohim by faith in Mashiach, Yahshua. For as many of you have been baptized into Messiah, have put on Messiah. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither bond nor free. There is neither male nor female. For ye are all one in Yahshua Messiah. He could have said, you are all anthropos, right? You are all a true human. So he says the same thing right there. I don't need to go through all that for lack of time. I've shown this before. This amazing list on the chronology of the cosmic week and showing 7,000 years of human history and how each of these 1,000 years lines up with the 7 days of creation, really the 6 days of creation, the seventh day of rest. And of course, then you see the eighth day there is the final defeat of Satan himself and the ultimate resurrection of all mankind, really the true circumcision of the heart, right? So when we see the uncleanness of the earth for 7 days, for 7,000 years, and then eventually within the eighth day is the ultimate purification. We saw that all, through tonight. And of course, we see the circumcision as well. These are all great passages, but unfortunately for lack of time, yeah, I'm sorry to do this. I'm also going to skip the Queen of Sheba stuff just because I've gone over this with you guys before. Let's talk about the number 33. We saw this tonight. In 33 days, she shall remain in the blood of her cleansing. Or it could be 66 days as well if it's a female. So this is from Zechariah chapter 13. And what I'm going to do tonight, and I'm going to be talking about Artemis too in the number 33, that the number 33 is we come into the red pill community and we're trained that everything 33 is evil. It's an evil number. And, well, let me just, you'll see what I'm getting at here. Zechariah 13:8. Awake, O sword, against my shepherd, against the man who is my companion, says Yahawaha of hosts. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. Then I will turn my hand against the little ones, and it shall come to pass in all the land, says Yahawaha, that 2/3 in it shall be cut off and die, but 1/3 shall be left in it. I will bring the 1/3 through the fire, will refine them as silver is refined, and test them as gold is tested. They will call on my name, and I will answer them. I will say, this is my people, and each one will say, Yahawaha is my Elohim. So we're seeing the 33 in here, and it's a sacred number. And he's saying that there's going to be this 33 that are saved in the end, that he's going to bring through the fire, and as silver is refined. And so that at the end of the day, our controllers the controlled opposition, they can take this and they could hype up all their ceremonies of the 33. But, we have to recognize here that there is, like, it wouldn't work spiritually, even for them, if there wasn't a reality to it. Because remember now, Satan isn't creating anything. He's just taking what exists and he's corrupting it. Now, interestingly enough, in Revelation 12, you guys know that the tail of the dragon, this is Draco, the zodiac. And the interesting thing about Draco is that he actually does cover, I think, a third of the zodiac. So as John is looking up there and writing this, he knows what he's talking about. And this Draco the dragon, he drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And we often connect this with the angels that rebelled. I'm not going to get into this with you guys tonight too much, but some of you know my theory out there that actually we are the third that rebelled. I've given a whole cases on this. All right, let's talk about Artemis 2, because today was a splashdown. I didn't see how it went, if it was good or bad. And of course, it was a 10-day mission in space around the moon. There is a picture of Artemis 2, because Artemis 1 launched at nighttime. Artemis 2, this is how you can tell the difference, launched during the day. And once again, you see it, kind of on its path down to the ocean. Once again, it's coming down to the earth. So when I had David Weiss on yesterday, Flat Earth Dave, I was reading off these different 33s. And he got with me after the show, and he's like, man, where did you dig up those numbers? And so I shared it with him, and I gave him all the numbers that I was reading off. And he, as a love offering to me, we don't send Valentines to each other, but, you could show your love for somebody by giving them a meme. You make them a meme, and that's what he did for me. So Dave Weiss made this right here. Based on what I was, and I fact checked all of this just to make sure it was accurate. So the Artemis 2 had 3.3 million pounds of thrust or booster. It had 330 cubic feet of living space. It's actually, the Orion capsule is pretty small. 3.3 meters capsule height. This one is very, very specific. They only allowed 3.3 pounds max personal belongings in the Artemis Orion shuttle. I mean, not 4 pounds, 3.5, 2.9, like 3.3, very specific. 3.3 pounds of water for thrusters. Here's another, like, we get what you're trying to do here. The Omega X33 watch is worn by all the crew. It is the watch that's sponsoring them. Artemis 2 in gematria adds up to 33. It has 33,000 pounds of thrust in space. And this one is my favorite. It's not 33, but it's they love to leave their calling card. This is 322, Skull and Bones. It's 322 feet tall, the Artemis 2. So here's some of it written down right here. And I just copied and pasted. I went and this is me looking all this up online, and I just was, AI is giving me space content creator, Northrop Grumman, and so on, so forth, PBS, all these different stuff, showing that all this is true, all the 33s. It's just like in your face, right? So the thing is about Artemis is Artemis does appear in the Bible in Acts chapter 19. And this is an idol that has been dug up from the 1st, 2nd century. There's actually been quite a few of them, and they're all similar. And what is that? She's very well endowed. They're kind of like breasts, but they're eggs. Those are eggs. She has been caught bare-breasted. I was going to say red-handed, but bare-breasted. But they're eggs. And so Artemis is identified with eggs. Now, this is interesting that they, of course, launched the shuttle on April 1st, and it went over Easter holiday, and that was intended. They actually had like an egg ceremony up there, which is so dumb. It's like you're flying around the moon, people. I mean, people go on vacation and you see a sunset and people are taking like 100 pictures on their phone of the sunset. They never look at those pictures again, but they think they will. They're going to cherish those forever, and they never look at them again. They flew around the moon and they're like, took like a picture, like 5 pictures of their entire flight or whatever. And while they're flying around the moon, they go on an egg hunt in the shuttle. Oh, give me a break, right? But it's just stupid. But it was clearly a religious ceremony, and they're connecting with Artemis herself. There's another idol that was found there. Again, the mini egg-breasted one, Artemis. I'm not going to read you the story. You can read this for yourself. This comes from Acts chapter 19, and it's the one where Paul is run out of town because the idol makers are so upset that people are buying less Artemis idols because of him. And those are the idols I just showed you right there. So, and this is the story here. I copied and pasted this. I can't remember where I found it from. You can look it up. But they talk about how there was they had hidden eggs around the cabin on Easter that they went looking for. Just again, so dumb. It's like you got people. You got space. I mean, I would be glued if I wasn't like fixing the toilet. The multi-million-dollar toilet that broke in space. If I wasn't fixing that with the plunger, I would be just glued to the window the whole time, looking for stars, looking for anything out there, and not looking for eggs. Why am I showing you the golden ratio? Well, the thing is with math is that math is not icky, as you guys know. It's in nature. I think this is why I want to show you right here, because even the dawn is the golden ratio. Get it? He's also the Midas himself. But yeah, he forms a golden ratio. The golden ratio is everywhere. 33 is not the golden ratio. However, it is cited as the master key or a threshold value that marks a transition from foundational physical structures to higher states of harmony and biological complexity. For example, I mentioned earlier today that the human spine, which is an axis mundi connecting the baser unconsciousness, hell, the nether regions to heaven up here, starts out with 33 vertebrae. And again, I think that we get less as we go on, but babies are born with 33. The DNA structure, some researchers point to 33 turns in a complete sequence of certain DNA segments, which is really interesting. And of course, I showed you the coiling double helix. I didn't even get into the whole history of the coiling double helix through ancient history. Lunar and solar cycles, it takes approximately 33 years for the lunar cycle to realign perfectly with the solar calendar, making 33 a number of celestial reset. Planetary mass, the sun is, this is a little Copernican. I'm getting a little Copernican on you tonight, I guess, but the sun is approximately 333,000 times the mass of the Earth, which we know that's not true. But according to the math, the way they line it up, it is. On the thermal transition, on the Newton scale, water boils at 33 degrees, representing a phase transition from liquid to gas. Getting into scripture, the 33rd time Noah's name is used in scripture is when God makes a special covenant or promise with him. The eternal promises to not destroy the entire world again with a flood and seal his pledge with the sign of the rainbow. The divine name of Elohim in strong concordance is initially mentioned in the first verse of Genesis, though Elohim appears 33 times in Genesis' story of creation. So that's really interesting. 33 is also the numeric equivalent of the word Amen. The 33rd time Abraham's name is used in the Bible is when Isaac, the child of promise, is born to him when he is 99 years old. The 33rd time Jacob's name is found in Scripture, he promised to give a tenth of all he had to Elohim when he had a vision of a ladder reaching to heaven. This is Jacob's ladder, so there's your axis mundi right here with the 33. David ruled over the tribe of Yehuda for the first 7.5 years of his monarchy, but then he ruled over Yahshua for 33 years afterwards. Speaking of which, the 33rd person in Yahshua's lineage from Adam is King David. And I've asked the question, was Yahshua 33 at the time of his death in 30 AD? We know that according to the Gospel of Luke, as a priest, being a priest age, he was about 30 years old when he reigned. Not when he reigned, I'm sorry, when his ministry began. And that, basic question, was a 1-year ministry, a 3-year ministry? A lot of people go with the 3-year ministry. I'm really interested in the 1-year ministry. I have not done a deep dive on that, so I can't tell you, though, I've naturally been inclined towards the 3-year ministry. There's a lot here in the 33s. All right. We read this. I had to show you the golden ratio again. So we read this in Leviticus 14:14 tonight, with the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe, the right foot, and the blood. This is what we read about. One of the themes tonight, I think, is the Edenic vision, living in paradise versus the outer darkness. And Psalm 116 tells us this, speaking of walking according to the Torah of Yahawaha: I will walk before Yahawaha in the land of the living. Isn't that interesting? So the land of shadow and death is walking not according to the law. But if we are, wherever we are, if we are walking according to the light of the Torah, it is a lamp to our feet, right? We are walking in the land of the living. Psalm 116. All right. Well, I think we're going to end tonight talking about leprosy. And I do want to talk about it as a spiritual condition and potentially the mark of Cain. I've covered this before, though. As I've stated earlier tonight, leprosy does seem to be not really a specific classification of a disease like we think of it today. It seems to be a lot of different things. And one of the famous, and this is from the movie Kingdom of Heaven. This was Baldwin IV of Jerusalem during the Crusades. And he was famously depicted in the movie The Kingdom of Heaven, and he had leprosy. And there's a scene where he takes off his hand and his mask, and you see, I think it was when he died that they finally pulled the mask off, and you saw like it was just rotted away, and his hand looked like a mummy and all that. Is that the leprosy that's being talked about specifically in the Bible? So there's the passage in Leviticus 15 about the 7 days, the 8th day, the cleansing. And here is a very controversial book, which I cannot establish whether this is legitimate or not. It is nonetheless a fascinating read, the Book of Lamech of Cain. And it talks about the mark of Cain. Now, keep in mind, this is not what I would call, by any means, even if it is legitimate, meaning it's a very, very, very old book. If it can be proved to be, it is still not scripture. Okay, this is not even what I would call an extra biblical book. It happens to be biblical literature in the sense that it agrees with, biblical characters, but it's not coming from the position of holiness. And so this is what it says: Cain, the forefather of Lamech, who was marked with leprous whiteness. For Elohim had said, whomever slays Cain shall have vengeance visited upon their heads sevenfold. As Havel's blood cried from the ground, ... Same leprous whiteness was made a sign that was visited upon all of Cain's descendants, as it was their inheritance for 7 generations. All right. So according to this, for 7 generations, going all the way up to Naamah, who married Noah. And even this book also credits the saying that she married Noah, giving birth to Ham, that they had 7 generations of the mark of Cain. In this instance, it was leprosy. So it is saying that it was a spiritual condition that was the result of Cain murdering his brother. So we can have spiritual leprosy. Even if it doesn't show on our skins, we can be leprous people in our sinfulness. Of course, the first person to officially receive leprosy in canon would be Aaron and Miriam. I'm going to save that because we'll be reading that in Numbers chapter 12. There's also the case of Naaman's leprosy being healed. And of course, what happens is his servant is greedy, and the leprosy jumps from Naaman over to his servant. And the servant of Elisha, actually, bummer, right? The servant of Elisha, he gets greedy and it jumps over to him. And so right there, you're seeing yet again a spiritual condition. The spiritual condition with Aaron and Miriam, it was when they were getting gossipy over Moses. And and they were going to do some serious damage if that spread. And Yahawaha basically said, you got leprosy because you're spiritually, you already have a spiritual leprosy. So let's remember that. We don't want to be a leprous people. We don't want to have spiritual leprosy. Even if it doesn't show physically, we can still have it spiritually. Here we have Yahshua cleansing lepers. Let's finish today. What do we want to finish on? Let's talk about spiritual leprosy. This was a article here on spiritual leprosy. Spiritual leprosy is caused by pride and pain and develops through a process of constantly denying one's conscience for an extended time. Painful experiences initiate the process. Pride fuels the process and creates the momentum that propels the process forward. The longer the process continues, the more the spirit is seared and numbered to godly grief. For example, a young woman is hurt by legalism and graceless fundamentalism in her church. This pain drives her out of the church and toward atheism. After all, how could there be a God when so-called godly people are so judgmental? Nowadays, it seems like just everything is not so much driving women to atheism, but to feminism. And that's, their crutch to not be hurt, right? If they can be in control and dominion in the God of their own lives, have no authority over them. The young woman, out of pride, refuses to self-examine and admit that her conclusion may be faulty. The more she denies the truth she had learned in the church and the voice of the Spirit wooing her back to Christ, the less able she is to respond to them. And isn't that the truth? In time, she is so lost in her devotion to the false teaching of atheism, I would just say fill in the blank to feminism here, that only the divine intervention of God himself can save her. And remember that when we're dealing with people who are very lost, that, you're not the one responsible to bring them back. It has to be Yah that does it. Another common example of spiritual leprosy arises out of sexual brokenness. A boy is rejected and looked down upon by all the male figures in his life, including his father and uncles. He is also molested by an older boy at school. This does not sound like it's going well. The pain of rejection and molestation leads him to crave the attention and affection of men. And this is, of course, how it happens with all homosexuals. Maybe not necessarily the rejection from the father. It could be daddy issues, but the molestation part. In later life, he devotes himself to a sexual ethic contrary to the teachings of Scripture. After years of being active in his lifestyle and system of indoctrination, his conscience is seared and he is no longer able to feel godly grief. Though keep in mind that when he was molested and went through that experience, he's being rejected by girls, by his father. He's feeling a lot of emotion, but eventually, turning to in this case, the spiritual state of leprosy itself is his way of searing the pain and the grief and the consciousness. So isn't that interesting how that works? All right. I'm going to just end on that tonight. Let me just read this, Hebrews chapter 4. I have so many passages and, I wish I could get to them all. Let us therefore be diligent to enter that rest, lest anyone fall according to the same example of disobedience. By the way, we just read about the Sabbath day, that we should keep the same Sabbath day as Yahshua, and that anyone who keeps a different Sabbath day is falling into an example of disobedience. For the word of Allahayam is living and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even to the division of soul and spirit, and of joints and marrow, and is a discerner of the thoughts and intents of the heart, meaning that it can pierce into us and expose our own spiritual leprosy. One of the, it's certainly a sign that God loves us if he is convicting us of our sins. Let me tell you, if you are in a place where you're no longer convicted of your sins, that's in a spiritual leprous condition. That's not good. You are now outside the camp and you're not getting cleansed. And there is no creature hidden from his sight, but all things are naked and open to the eyes of him to whom we must give account. Seeing then that we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, and there he is, right? The high priest is coming to the outside of the camp to make us clean again. Yahshua, the son of Elohim, let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. Of course, so he doesn't have the leprous condition. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Hebrews chapter 4. I'm going to end there tonight. Like I said, next week I'm going to be coming to you during my week of unleavened bread, and I think everyone will have probably left my house by the time. You never know, there might be someone surfing, crashing on the sofa, but I'll have a update, of course, on all the happenings of the week I'm looking forward to, and hopefully I will be able to give you the big news that I'm not able to give you right now. So love you guys. Hope you have a good restful Sabbath, good week. We'll do this again later. Good night, everybody.